Good afternoon. Welcome back. So today I want to show you what we did after the last episode where we hoisted the side wall log onto the cabin. And so today, to follow on to that, I'm going to show you the next step, or at least the next step that I would do if I were to build this cabin. So what I'm going to show you are the tools that I'm using today. This little saw here to remove any imperfections on the logs, like knots that stick out, things like that. Little square here, 12-inch square. Little hammer. This hammer I used pounding out some dents in my old Cadillac. I got a 51 Cadillac out in the garage. My little compass scribe tool that I've been using. Pencil. Paper. And I'll show you these here. I made these. These simulate log dogs. And I'll show you what I did with those. These are really easy to make. I just took a 2.5-inch finish nail and ground down the edge here on one of them flat, and then the other part is just the head of the nail. So or the tip of the nail, sorry, not the head. Okay. Alright, so anyway, back to these log dogs that I made. Like I said, I ground one end. I ground the head of the nail off. These were 2.5-inch finish nails to a kind of a flat point, because those log dogs, they have different points on them, so that when you pound it into the wood with a hammer, that they stick in there nice and tight and they don't let the log move. So that's basically what I've done. I just bent them in the vise. I have a vise outside, and I just put them in the vise, and then took a pair of pliers and just went down on it like that and put a bend in it. It's pretty easy. Didn't take me long. And the end result of the log dogs are right here. They're in place. I started by putting them on the back side of the log, or the inside wall of the cabin, here and over here, so that log doesn't move either while I'm scribing it or while I'm cutting into the saddle of the log. So those are in place. I just took this little hammer here and pounded them in, and they went right in. Hello again. Welcome back. So we talked about the log dogs that I made. I've got them pounded back here behind this log to hold that log steady while I scribe it. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to show you the process that I think is right. If I'm not right, let me know. Or if there's an easier way to do it. But my thinking was, before I scribe this log in, I want to give myself the best opportunity for success. And what I mean by success is, you know, a good, nice, even gap between logs that we can put chinking in later. So things that can happen on the circumference of the log are, you know, I wouldn't call them imperfections. They're just naturally occurring things like knots or burls that grow on the side of a tree, where you've cut branches off of the tree. You know, you didn't cut them close enough to the log. They're sticking out, you might say. And anything like that on the logs that stick out is going to prevent them from, you know, from the logs from becoming, you know, seated very nicely and evenly, and sometimes even flush. So that's very important that you examine your logs, look at them real close, get down there and really look at the log closely and see if there's something that you can take care of before you even start scribing and cutting your saddle notches. Okay? So wherever your log is sitting, you know, you've chosen the best place for it. And for me, that started out by, you know, by eye, centering the log above, directly above the sill log, or the bottom log here on this wall, outside wall. So what I did was I took my little square here and I measured the width across the bottom log. And then I took that measurement and I divided it in half. And then I took my pencil or my marker and I put a line right there at the midway point on that measurement. That gave me the exact center of that log on this end. Now, you know, the thing with logs is, you know, I've seen some really straight logs on some really nice cabins, but where I'm going to be harvesting my logs, it's not like that. You know, I've got different types of logs that are kind of grew this way or that way, and some of them have a little bend to them or a bow to them. So, you know, you have to take all that into consideration when you're selecting your logs, because you want the straightest, most even log possible, because it just makes your life easier. But you know, if you have logs that aren't nice and straight like that. Okay, so how I lined these logs up, like I said, I took half the distance between here and here on the bottom log and drew my line there. And then I did the same thing. I took the middle of this log here and drew a line. And then I shifted the log back and forth until these two lines lined up and were, you know, level. Also, I looked down the log, you know, there's them lines I was talking to you about that I marked on there above the middle points, lined them up. And then I looked on top of the log too. There's a close-up of my log dog in there, holding the log. And so if I tilt the camera, you can see the log under it. This way, same thing. So I tried to get my log by eye the best I could, centered, looking down on it, centered all the way down. And also I wanted to make sure that my logs in the front are lining up too with the overhang, see? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you the scribing process and determining the distance between logs. Okay, welcome back. So the next thing I wanted to show you about the placement of the logs also is to remove any naturally occurring lumps, bumps, that kind of stuff. See, so right here I'll show you. I had a little burl or something growing on the outside of this thing, and it was raised up like that. There, it was kind of had a crown on, or a mound. Well, what's going to happen is when you set this, when this log comes down after you saddle cut it and lower it down, it's gonna, the bottom of this log here is going to hit on this log here. I mean, unless you're doing a full scribe of this log, you know, you'd do a full scribe and then you'd flip it over and you'd cut a notch with a chainsaw, you know, all the way down the length of it. And then when it comes down, the imperfections, whatever they are, it all fits together perfectly because you've scribed it that way. But that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is removing little things. So what I had to do was, there was a high point here on the wood, and I just took this little saw and I cut it off, you know. I went from both sides. I got where it went flat here on the log, and then it started to rise, and I started right there with my saw and I went through it and got it out of there. Okay? Then what I did was I took my little compass scribe here I've been using, and I wanted to find out my high and my low points, or my widest or narrowest points between the two logs here, this gap here. See, because these logs aren't 100% true, like if they were cut on a mill or something. These are natural logs that you've harvested out of the woods, and they're different. Okay, so start here at one end. What I did was I started here, and I took a real close look at where the bottom of the top log there is, and then the top of the bottom log is, exactly, or as precisely as I could with this compass. And then I took that measurement, and I went over here to my square, and I found out what that measurement is. Okay, and it's about 1 1/8 inches. So I put high point, and then I wrote down 1 1/8 of an inch. That's basically the widest point. I just called it the highest point from the bottom to the top, from the top of this log to the bottom of that. This height here, the highest point, because it's going to vary all the way down through this gap. So then what I did was I wanted to find my low point. So I started where I was there, and then I went down the log, and then I just, you know, closed it as need be. As it got narrower through there, I closed it. I had to close it a little more towards the middle here, because it was, you know, there we go. And I'm going down like that, and then I closed it a little bit more right there where I had that problem. That's about the narrowest point. That's about the lowest point right there that I could find. And I went on over, and it started to get larger again. And this point over here turned out to be 1 inch. So it was 1/8 of an inch different from over here to over here. But I don't know about this middle area. So what I did was I put the low point as 7/8 here. And that's that point I found over here in the middle with the scribe. And then what I did was I split the difference. I found out how much the difference was, and then I just split it. So what I did was, so 1 inch and 1/8, and then 7/8. That's a difference of 1/4 of an inch. And so then I decided, well, I'll just go ahead and split that difference. So, you know, the center point between 7/8 and 1 1/8 would be 1 inch, right? Because half of the difference is 1/8 of an inch. So you just add 1/8 of an inch to the lower number, and that puts you at 1 inch. So I called 1 inch the split, or the split difference of the high and low points in the gap. Welcome back. So what I'm going to do now is scribe the saddle notches of the first sidewall log. So again, if you come over here on this side of the log, you'll see my log dogs are attached. So that gives me room over here to start scribing. Okay, I got my scriber tool here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here. I'm going to try to keep this as level as possible. The log dogs are holding the log in place for me. I'm going to start right. I'm going to put my lead right on the bottom of the log, the top log there. But before I do that, what I did was I measured out, getting back to my little math problem here. It was pretty easy though. But what I determined was that the difference between the high point and the low point was 1/4 of an inch. So I went ahead and divided 1/4 in half and got 1/8 of an inch to split the difference. And then I added that 1/8 of an inch back to the 7/8 of an inch, and that took me to 1 inch even. And that puts me right in between 7/8 and 1 1/8. So I decided to go ahead and scribe the log saddles 1 inch to start with, and then see how that fits, and then go from there. So how I did that is I took out my square here, and I set the scribe to 1 inch, like that there. And then I went over to my corner here, and again, keeping this as level as possible, I went up around this log here, like that. And I put a pencil mark on there, lead mark, and then I went up, okay, like that there. I made my mark. Then went over here on the other side of the log, and I did the same thing, coming up, keeping my scribe on my log on the bottom there, and then the lead just naturally follows the curvature of the bottom log, and there you go. Okay, so that's how I scribed that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the other side, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out my saddles outside on my chop saw, like I showed you the other day, where you roll the log right down to the scribe marks, and then chip it out, and then see how it fits.